I'm fired up, you guys. This is going to be a real one. So, yesterday I had a good old fashioned Facebook debate, and then I made a video that got a little bit too ranty. So, I never posted it. You're welcome. However, in watching this footage back, I realized there's a lot of really good information that many of you would likely want to have in order to understand more about the toxic load of glyphosate and what your body is likely carrying. So let's take a look. The way I look at it, a lack of information is disempowerment. So my goal today is to give you some information to consider so that you can be empowered to make your own decision. Because with all of this access to information and the quick, catchy TikToks and Reels, who can we really trust? Hi, I'm Monique Gloria, and I'm on a mission to help people become resilient to stress so that they can live healthy and happy lives. This mission found me while I was working to understand what was making my toddler daughter so sick in order to help her heal and get better. Over the past year, I've learned so much about how the body works physically and energetically. I feel compelled to share what I've learned to help others who may not have the luxury of time or the passion for research that I have to deepen my understanding. What the heck is glyphosate anyway? Glyphosate is a herbicide that's used to control weeds and grasses. It's the active ingredient in many herbicide products, including the popular Roundup. Glyphosate has been registered as a pesticide in the United States since 1974, and it's commonly used in many other countries around the world. Roundup is produced by Bayer Monsanto. To get specific, glyphosate is a broad-spectrum herbicide. That means it can't be used to kill specific weeds or plants. Instead, it kills most broadleaf plants in the area that is used. Wait, it kills everything? Yeah, so that was a bit of a letdown, but that didn't stop innovative Monsanto from coming up with the idea to genetically engineer crops to specifically withstand glyphosate. Those crops are what we know as GMO. Now, there's a ton of debate around this, and we just don't have time for that today. So we'll skip over it and circle back if it makes sense in the future. So let's carry on with our discussion. So now that we know that GMO farmers can spray Roundup on crops like corn and soybeans that are genetically engineered to withstand it, some also spray it on non-GMO crops like wheat, barley, oats, and beans to dry out the crops so that they can harvest them sooner with greater yield. Well, that doesn't sound all that bad. It sounds like science is helping farmers. Sure, I get that perspective personally. And let me tell you a little story. A few years ago, we moved to the countryside. And with garden beds already in place, I took up gardening to get some nice organic produce in our house. I spent what's not a small amount of money on supplies and seeds and plants and tools, countless hours preparing, weeding, planting, weeding, watering, weeding, and caring and weeding for them. One night, the deer came through and decimated the garden. And yes, it's our fault we hadn't fenced it in, but I had a sick child on my hand in a global pandemic, so sue me. Anyway, the squash and zucchini managed to survive because, man, they are resilient plants. So finally, the day arrived when a squash was to be harvested and we were going to enjoy it with dinner. I cut open this beautiful yellow squash and it was bright green inside. It turns out this joyful little pest actually caused this to happen. And let me tell you how fast I wanted to hose the whole garden down with pesticides because it was heartbreaking. I couldn't imagine if my family's livelihood depended on the quality and consistency of crops minus weeds. I'd most likely be saying something along the lines of, "Thank you for sending us the Monsanto gods who created Roundup and glyphosate-resistant crops. I place a curse and smite anyone who dares speak ill upon this God-send Roundup." I mean, seriously, do these organic hippies want to starve? I truly get it. I remember when a close friend of mine had kids years ago and she got rid of all the chemicals in her house, and I thought it was a bit dramatic at the time, and I thought, oh, it's so cute that she went granola, and I just carried on about my life. And that's the beauty of being relatively healthy and blissfully ignorant of what's happening around us for the sake of profit. And some of us aren't that lucky to be healthy and to be able to ignore all of these things. I can tell you that my mother's intuition is telling me that something is wrong. We are a sick nation with a sick care system that isn't working for everyone. There are large numbers. I'm talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably even millions of people who aren't on Facebook groups, but they're all desperate to get better. And our current system is not helping. They're passing them around, gaslighting them. And honestly, I hope you aren't one of those people because I can tell you firsthand, it sucks. Honestly, what's happened across the last 2 years has forced many people to wake up and really consciously look at what's going on. And I strongly believe that things can't get better until we first acknowledge what the problem is so that we can make some real changes. Ooh, someone is a bit fired up. I'm going to set aside these Instagram and TikTok babes for a minute and dig deeper into the reason why she seems really frustrated. She mentions throwing away a ton of money on food she thought was better, only making these companies richer. Now that's something I can relate to. When my daughter was younger, I wanted her to have all the best. I'm talking fresh strawberries, avocado, banana, fresh fruit, vegetables with every meal, but she just got sicker and sicker. It turns out this food that I was told was good for us and was the most healthy wasn't right for my daughter because every body is different. Anyone who tells you that anything is safe or not safe for everyone is wrong, period, because every body is different. Maybe the money she felt that she was wasting on organic food that was making her sicker was because she was eating foods that she thought were healthy, when in reality they weren't right for her body. I'm starting to notice that there's about 20% of the population who has some varying degree of reaction to the same foods my daughter has as well. And if our healthcare system is set up to help the 80% of people, and if our standards for what's safe in our food works for the lethal dose for the average person, these people in that 20% are at risk. My friend on Facebook went on to talk about food fear, which is also something I'm really passionate about because I was terrified and an anxious mess for months when I knew something that I was feeding my daughter was making her so sick. It seemed like everything was honestly making her sick and the doctors couldn't even help. Talk about major anxiety, not knowing what you can feed your child at all. And that's why I created a guided meditation to help those with food anxiety to release some of those fears now that I'm on the other side of it. However, just because learning about something such as glyphosate is scary and makes you afraid of food doesn't mean that there isn't reason to be concerned. Closing your eyes to fear and saying, oh, that makes me afraid, so it's not good, and so I'm not even going to entertain it. That doesn't sound logical to me. It sounds like you're looking for confirmation bias, where these Instagram food and farm babes are saying that you're wasting money on organic because there's no proof that these chemicals are making us sick. Hey, future Monique here. Statements like this are misleading because you can cherry pick statements out of peer-reviewed journals easily. For example, here's the opening statement in one study. Glyphosate has been rigorously and extensively tested for carcinogenity by administration to mice, 5 studies, and to rats, 9 studies. Most authorities have concluded that the evidence does not indicate a cancer risk to humans. If you stopped there and you were calling yourself an expert, who is really going to go and research further on their own? However, the very next line continues. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, however, evaluated some of the available data and concluded that glyphosate probably is carcinogenic to humans. It's just that easy to be misleading. Just because all scientists don't agree does not mean that there is no evidence that something is dangerous to us. Before I go on even further, I want to take a moment to hold space for you to check in with your own body to see if this is something you need to dive into even further. Close your eyes now and take 2, 3, or 4 more relaxing breaths. And as you do this, ask your body to show you what yes feels like. Now ask your body to show you what no feels like. It might be a flicker of a muscle or a feeling of tense or energy in a specific location in your body. Really take some time to listen. Start that conversation. But from this relaxed and connected space, close your eyes, take another deep breath, and ask yourself, is glyphosate an issue for my body? If this is your first time checking in, you might need to keep practicing until you have open lines of communication. However, I highly recommend you always run things through this type of intuitive filter for yourself. Don't take my word for it, and certainly don't take any other influencers for that matter. In the original video, I went point by point outlining a Facebook debate that spurred this video with my reactions and their counter-reactions, and this debate centered around the research by EWG and a blog post that was shared disputing their validity through the cosmetics and beauty industry lens. I'll spare you from listening to that whole rant, but the blog post did end with one good point that I thought I'd share with you along with my reaction. When someone, especially when they're propped up on a pedestal, tells us that natural products are safer or greener, that your products aren't killing you, and that cosmetic scientists are evil and corrupt, well, it would be dangerous not to believe them. Now, this is something I can agree with. And even though she was saying a bit sarcastically, I have to say, when someone is on a pedestal saying that industrial farming practices and the chemicals are safe and we shouldn't worry, that is suspect to me. Yet so many consumers of their information are sick and desperately trying to find a doctor to help them get better. I'm sure they have some good things to say, but when you come out and firmly say there is no science to show that glyphosate harm you and support chemicals, additives, and preservatives in our food, and to mock those who are trying to educate others to take control of their health and wellness, you might inadvertently be misinforming a lot of people. And this makes me so mad because we have forgotten discernment. We listen to these people who have platforms and who resonate with us and confirm the biases and beliefs that we have. And especially when we feel guilty and sad and fearful because we don't have money for organic or what have you, they're feeding into this and it's keeping us sick. You need to use your intuition. Start at whatever level you can today. Because when you're healthy and your immune system is working properly, you might just be able to handle the pesticides just fine, like they're suggesting. However, for maybe those 20% or more of the population with autoimmune diseases and other sicknesses that they can't figure out, they likely aren't taken into consideration in these studies. One study I read in a peer-reviewed journal about glyphosate mentioned that the measure of acute toxicity of a substance in the lethal dose is for 50% of the population. So what if those levels are fine for the vast majority of Americans, but not for the immune compromised, our children, or those who are sick or with genetic predispositions? Shouldn't they have access to knowledge, research, and information to decide for themselves? I, out of curiosity, did a very informal poll on my Instagram story, just out of curiosity to know how many people I know knew about glyphosate and the data about it being in foods such as Cheerios. I was just curious to see if these folks were right, that EWG is creating a fear machine in the general public to force us to want to have organic foods. And interestingly, 71% of my friends who voted had never even heard of this, and I hadn't either until my daughter was sick. And she wasn't sick because of some preconceived notion about GMO foods or organic being better. Something in it was making her sick. And after noticing a number of people in support groups that I belong to talk about, I went to Italy and I just was tired of being sick and tired of being afraid of food, and I just ate gluten. I felt perfectly fine there. Breads, pastas, pizzas. And then when I came home, I got sick again. So I decided to consult with my daughter's doctor, and we started introducing gluten imported from Italy. We've used flour to make pizzas, dried imported pastas, with no reaction whatsoever, which is quite different from when we eat USA-sourced grains or flour. Then I found out in 2016 the Italian government banned the use of glyphosate as a pre-harvest treatment and placed restrictions on glyphosate used in areas frequented by the public. In November of 2017, Italy was one of 7 European Union nations to vote against relicensing glyphosate. As I say that out loud, it really has me thinking, what if all of this increasing gluten sensitivity and tolerance actually doesn't have anything to do with gluten itself? What if it's about what we're allowing in our foods in the United States? If you've made it all the way to this part of the video, I hope you take one thing away from this. The only person you can truly trust 100% is a deep connection to your intuition. Hold a product in the store. Ask your body, ask your intuition if it's good for you. Build that connection. Start that conversation, because no one will know what is best for you besides you. Not the Instagram food babes, not me, not marketers, not the government, and certainly not corporations. All that you can do is make the best decisions possible for you and your family based upon the information available to you and to your intuition. You can let go of any past wrongs because it's not about low vibrational emotions such as shame, guilt, or fear. View it as information that you now have, and with that knowledge, with that information, you are empowered to make a decision from this day moving forward. It's not about fear, it's about empowerment. Let's rise above the misinformation that these Instagram babes are putting out there and that corporations are pushing in order to keep us sick and eating these chemicals that are making us sicker. And for the love of all things good, please stop hurling the word misinformation at the things you don't agree with. We used to believe that our genes determined our health and our fate. Anyone who said otherwise would be called pseudoscience and quacks. However, when they mapped out the human genome, they expected to find over 100,000 genes based upon all of the science and facts up to that point. The problem is, they found roughly 20,000 genes when they did the genome mapping. Yeah, that's roughly the same amount as some species of flies. Enter the field of epigenetics. It states that our internal environment, the hormones, the chemicals, the proteins, the pathways, all determine how our genes express themselves, either healthy or not. Our understanding of how our bodies work is still evolving. The science of today might not be 100% accurate in the future, especially when it's related to the epigenome. However, if you feel off when you use a product with parabens, or you get a headache after eating oats, look deeper into what you're consuming and talk to your body. And as my co-founder Lauren would want me to say, don't wait until it gets to what she's dealing with and trying to heal her body from. As one of my great inspirations, Dr. Hans Selye says, since these were my first patients, I was capable of looking at them without being biased by current medical thought. Had I known more, I never would have asked myself questions because everything was handled just the way it should be. That is, just the way every good physician does it. Had I known more, I would certainly have been stopped by the biggest of all blocks to improvement, the certainty of being right. The certainty of being right. Thank goodness this young medical student asked challenging questions and didn't stop when others called his research dirt. Otherwise, we might not know about the impacts of stress on our health. I'll certainly be diving more into stress in future videos, but I wanted to circle back and make one thing clear. I don't believe glyphosate is the only problem and the singular source of sickness in Americans, and in other countries who use it as well. It's simply just one common toxin that we likely all face, whether we know it or not. The goal is not to scare you, but simply to provide you with information for you to digest so that you can make informed and knowledgeable decisions around what you want to consume moving forward. Wellness is truly a collection of steps, headed in the right direction with intent and purpose. Maybe minimizing your glyphosate load is where your wellness journey takes you today. Only you will know what is best for you. I can say that in understanding this one piece of the puzzle, I'm beginning to see the bigger picture for myself. In the next video, I'll share what my doctor had to say about glyphosate in my body that had my jaw on the floor. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. I can assure you, you'll never regret challenging the status quo if it feels off, or following your own intuition on what's best for you. If you're not sure where to start in deepening that intuitive connection, hypnosis was a game changer for me, which freed me from stress and anxiety and helped me reclaim my personal power. And if what I shared with you today resonates, please reach out to see how we might be able to work together, because it would be my great honor to help you do the same.